Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your insights and sources and really try to transform them into crystal clear understanding. Today, we're plunging into a topic that's quietly yet, well, profoundly reshaping our lives, the way we move. Or maybe, more accurately, how many of us don't move much at all? Think about your day, seriously. From the mid-1980s, maybe even earlier, to now, the digital revolution has completely rewired our routines. We're glued to screens, computers, phones, tablets, which often means long hours of sitting, staring, and, well, staying still. It's no longer just a hunch. Our sources reveal that as many as a quarter of Americans don't even engage in any leisure time physical activity. Zero. And here's a startling thought. Even if you hit the gym regularly, that 8-hour stretch at your desk, it might be subtly undoing some of your hard work. Prolonged sitting has this independent link to increased all-cause mortality. It's a health factor we genuinely cannot ignore anymore. This isn't just about feeling a bit sluggish. It's having a tangible toll on public health, making our bodies less adaptable, less resilient, and the physical evidence. It's mounting. Research suggests musculoskeletal pain is far more common today than it was, say, 50 years ago. Poor movement quality things like slouching at your desk or maybe compensating with one part of your body when another is weak that leads to higher injury rates and even physiological stress. Your body is literally working harder, producing more stress hormones like cortisol just to get through daily tasks inefficiently. But what if there was a systematic way to proactively address these issues, to optimize movement before an injury even whispers, uh-oh?
That's precisely our mission in this deep dive. We're going to unpack this whole concept of corrective exercise. We'll explore its rationale, the compelling why now, delve into its systematic process, and show you why it's becoming such an indispensable tool. And not just for elite athletes, but really for anyone looking to improve how they move, prevent injury, and enhance their overall performance in what we're calling our increasingly non-functional world. This structured approach isn't just about feeling better. It can truly transform your fundamental understanding of how your own body works, from the ground up. The why now, modern life's toll on movement.
So let's kick things off with that powerful why, because it's more than just a vague feeling that we're less active, isn't it? There's a clear, stark link.
Absolutely. The sheer prevalence of technology has, without a doubt, made us less active in our daily lives outside of maybe structured workouts. And as you highlighted, this sedentary behavior isn't just a nuisance. It significantly increases all-cause mortality. That's a big deal. What's fascinating, or maybe concerning here, is that a consistent lack of physical activity creates what we call a kinetic chain that's just less prepared to adapt and recover from everyday stresses, which in turn, well, it leads to increased injury rates.
Kinetic chain. Okay, that sounds pretty technical. Can you maybe give us an analogy? Because it sounds like if one link is weak, the whole system suffers, right?
You've got it. Exactly. Imagine your body like a string of pearls, maybe. Or perhaps a finely tuned orchestra. Each joint, muscle, and nerve is a pearl or an instrument connected to the next. If one pearl is chipped or one instrument is out of tune, the whole string or the entire symphony kind of falls apart, or at least doesn't work optimally. So if your ankle joint isn't moving properly, maybe it's stiff, or your glute muscles aren't firing effectively, it doesn't just affect that one spot. The stress travels up the chain, perhaps to your knee, your hip, or even your lower back, forcing other parts to compensate.
Okay. Compensation. That makes perfect sense. And we're not just talking about serious accidents here. You mentioned widespread musculoskeletal pain. The sources really drive home how poor movement quality isn't just, bad form. It's like a constant inefficient battle your body is fighting. Things like habitually slouching at your desk, which so many of us do, or using your lower back to lift something heavy instead of your legs and core. How does that actually translate into damage or stress?
Well, these inefficient patterns, what we technically call movement impairments, they don't just bump up your injury risk. They put a real physical grind on your body. Imagine the impact on your knees if you land stiff-legged from a jump compared to a proper soft bend. That stiff landing creates biomechanical stress, extra, unwanted forces that wear down joints and tissues over time, day after day. And that chronic grind then trickles down. It can even cause physiological stress, like you mentioned, increased cortisol production. That impacts everything from sleep to immunity. So, it's a systemic issue.
Right. So what's the flip side of this rather grim picture? What happens when we do manage to move well?
Well, what's truly exciting is the potential for an appropriate movement preparation technique. That's the good news. When you integrate components like flexibility, core stability, balance, targeted strength, and a dynamic warm-up, you can significantly improve your body's ability to absorb force and dramatically reduce injury risk. This strongly supports the idea that actively addressing decreased activity and poor movement quality can counteract muscular dysfunction and prevent injuries. And really, this isn't just for elite athletes. These principles have profound applications across all populations, all environments, from someone training for a marathon to someone who just wants to pick up their grandchild without pain. 2, what exactly is corrective exercise?
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more then.
Right.
We've established a clear problem, a clear need for a solution. So this corrective exercise we've been hinting at, what exactly is it, at its core?
Right. At its core, corrective exercise is defined as the systematic process of identifying a neuromusculoskeletal dysfunction, developing a plan of action, and implementing an integrated corrective strategy. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It certainly is. Could you break down neuromusculoskeletal dysfunction for us? Like, into simpler terms, what does that actually look like in real life, maybe?
Okay, good question. Think of your body like a finely tuned machine, or maybe a classic car, if you like. Neuromusculoskeletal dysfunction is basically when a few parts, say your nerves, your muscles, or your bones, are playing out of sync or aren't quite tuned right. Maybe a muscle isn't firing when it should, or a joint isn't moving through its full, smooth range. It's not necessarily a broken bone, but it's enough to throw off the whole performance of your movement. It makes it inefficient or maybe even painful. The primary objective of corrective exercise, then, is to optimize that movement quality, and this, in turn, enhances performance, improves physical results, increases injury resistance, boosts movement efficiency, and can even speed up recovery.
And it's really crucial to understand its core philosophy here, isn't it? Because it's distinct from, say, physical therapy. It's not about treating an injury after it's already happened.
Precisely. That's a key distinction, and it's really important. Corrective exercise is fundamentally about reducing the likelihood of injury in a currently healthy individual. Think of it as proactive prevention, like a tune-up for your body before a breakdown. Of course, it can be applied post-injury, but only after professional medical treatment and, crucially, clearance from a healthcare provider. It's about building resilience before the challenge hits.
Okay. To truly get this, we need to clarify a few key concepts that underpin the whole approach. You touched on the kinetic chain earlier, that interconnected series of links. What are some of the other crucial ideas?
Well, beyond the kinetic chain, we have neuromusculoskeletal dysfunction, which we just discussed, that misalignment or inefficiency in your nerves, muscles, and bones. Then there are motor recruitment strategies. This basically refers to the specific way your nervous system activates muscles for movement, how it calls them into action. If you have poor strategies, it often means your body is compensating, using muscles that shouldn't be the primary movers for a particular task.
So if I'm getting that right, a poor motor recruitment strategy might be someone who always lifts with their back instead of engaging their legs and core. Their body gets the job done, but kind of inefficiently and maybe riskily.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. Or even something as seemingly simple as shrugging your shoulders every time you reach for something overhead instead of using your scapular stabilizers properly. Over time, those inefficient patterns build up stress in the wrong places. They become habits. And finally, we have postural distortion. These are the observable misalignments or imbalances in your posture that directly affect your overall movement quality, things you can actually see. Corrective exercise aims to minimize these less than ideal strategies that lead to that observable postural distortion and movement impairment, ultimately restoring balance and efficiency. 3. The step-by-step solution, the corrective exercise continuum.
Okay, we've built a strong case for why we need corrective exercise, and we've defined what it is. But I think the burning question for many listening is, how does this sophisticated idea actually translate into action? What's the playbook?
Indeed, it's not just theory. It's a very practical, systematic process. It essentially boils down to 3 main steps. First, you identify the problem. That's done through integrated assessments. Second, you solve the problem by designing a targeted plan. And third, you implement the solution through skilled coaching and specific exercises.
Let's hone in on that second step, solving the problem, because that's where the heart of the system seems to lie, the corrective exercise continuum. You described it as a systematic programming process.
Precisely. The continuum has 4 primary phases designed specifically to address those neuromusculoskeletal dysfunctions we just talked about. Think of it as a logical, sequential pathway to better movement. First phase is inhibit. This phase uses inhibitory techniques to reduce tension or decrease activity in overactive tissues. Think of it as quieting down those tight, overworking muscles. A common example is using self-myofascial release, like foam rolling. Imagine a knot in a rope. You don't try to stretch the rope before you've loosened that knot, right? That's inhibition.
Okay, loosen the knot first. Makes sense. What's next?
Next, phase 2 is lengthen. Once those tight spots are inhibited or quieted down, we use lengthening techniques to increase the extensibility, the stretchiness, and range of motion of those tissues. This includes various stretching methods, static stretching, dynamic stretching, or even neuromuscular stretching. So after foam rolling your tight hip flexors, you then stretch them to improve their length.
Got it. Inhibit, then lengthen. What's phase 3?
Phase 3 is activate. This phase is all about turning on or re-educating the underactive tissues that were identified back in the assessment phase. These are often the sleepy muscles that weren't pulling their weight, causing others to overwork. Isolated strengthening exercises are key here. For example, if your glutes are underactive, you might do specific exercises like glute bridges to consciously activate them, essentially reminding them of their job.
Right, wake up the sleeping muscles. And the final phase.
Finally, phase 4 is integrate. This is where we put it all together. Integration techniques retrain the collective synergistic function of all the muscles involved. We do this through functionally progressive, integrated dynamic movements. It means taking those individual improvements, the inhibited, lengthened, and activated muscles, and weaving them back into complex movements. So after addressing all the individual parts, you then practice performing something like a squat with proper alignment, ensuring all the parts are working together seamlessly, like that orchestra we talked about.
That progression makes so much logical sense. Inhibit, lengthen, activate, integrate.
Yeah.
But you don't just jump into these phases blindly, right? You mentioned assessment. The sources make it really clear that an integrated assessment process has to happen first. It sounds like that's absolutely critical for figuring out which muscles are overactive and which are underactive to begin with.
Crucially, yes, you absolutely nailed it. That integrated assessment is the foundation. Without it, you're just guessing. This process includes observing your posture, analyzing your movement patterns, how you squat, how you walk, how you reach overhead, and assessing your joint mobility. This assessment data is what helps determine precisely which tissues need to be inhibited and lengthened, and which need to be activated and strengthened. So in its simplest form, the corrective exercise continuum is a sequence of targeted flexibility and strengthening exercises tailored specifically to your unique posture and movement quality. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's deeply personalized. 4. The bigger picture: regional interdependence and scope of practice.
Okay, this systematic approach is clearly powerful, but it also brings up some bigger concepts about how our bodies truly work and, maybe just as importantly, who does what in the world of health and fitness. It really highlights that everything is connected.
You're spot on. And that leads us to a really important idea called the regional interdependence RI model. This concept basically suggests that the area where you feel pain, your primary musculoskeletal complaint, might actually be influenced or even caused by issues at remote sites, distant parts of the body. For example, your knee pain might actually stem from dysfunction in your hip or your ankle rather than being solely a knee problem itself. Impairments in one region will inevitably influence the movement quality and functional capacity of others. It forces a broader perspective. It also recognizes that symptoms can be influenced by multiple physiological and psychological systems, not just the physical structures.
So if everything is connected, like if my tight hips from sitting at a desk all day could somehow be contributing to my shoulder pain when I reach overhead, how does that chain reaction actually work? Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, it's all about how your body compensates. If your hips are stiff and don't have the mobility they need for a certain movement, your body is incredibly smart. It will find a way. It might try to get the needed range of motion from your lower back instead, putting extra strain there. Or when you lift something, it might shift more load to your shoulders because your core or hips aren't stabilizing properly. Over time, that constant compensation can lead to overuse, strain, and eventually pain in those secondary areas, the lower back or the shoulders in this example. It's kind of like putting too much air pressure in one tire because another one is flat eventually. That overpressured tire will start to wear out faster or even fail. That's why the RI model is so valuable. It forces us to look beyond just the site of pain.
That makes so much sense. But this sounds incredibly sophisticated. And with all these interconnected systems, who exactly is the corrective exercise specialist and what are their boundaries? This scope of practice sounds incredibly important for clarity and, frankly, safety.
Oh, it is absolutely critical. A corrective exercise specialist's role is very specific. It's to optimize movement quality and reduce injury risk in apparently healthy individuals. They do not diagnose medical conditions. They do not treat active injuries. And they certainly do not prescribe medications. That's crucial. They primarily work with people who are generally healthy, those who are post-rehabilitative treatment, but only with explicit medical clearance from their doctor or physical therapist, and athletes looking to enhance performance and prevent injury. Now, if a client reports symptoms or conditions that fall outside the scope, like sharp, localized pain that isn't typical workout soreness or maybe numbness, tingling, things like that, the specialist has a duty. They must refer them to the appropriate licensed healthcare provider. No exceptions.
Okay, keeping within that scope is crucial. But I can imagine there might be a gray area sometimes. How does a corrective exercise specialist differentiate between, say, a client's general soreness after a tough session and something that truly needs a medical referral? That seems like a fine line.
That's an excellent point, and it highlights the importance of thorough intake processes and really good ongoing communication with the client. Generally, muscle soreness, what we call DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, is typically diffuse, kind of spread out, often bilateral, meaning on both sides, and it usually resolves within 24 to 72 hours. It feels more like a generalized fatigue or stiffness. Acute pain from an actual injury, however, is often very localized. It might feel sharp, could be accompanied by swelling or bruising, and it persists or even worsens over time. Specialists are trained to recognize these red flags and, honestly, to always err on the side of caution. Client safety is paramount, so they refer out if there's any doubt. They understand they are part of a larger ecosystem of care.
And that larger ecosystem is what the sources call the care and performance continuum.
Mm.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, this continuum ranges from, hospitals and emergency clinics at one end through various therapists like physical therapists, occupational therapists, chiropractors, and then extends into health and fitness specialties, including corrective exercise specialists. They play this vital role in bridging the gap, often from formal rehabilitation back to optimal performance or just pain-free daily activity. The sources even give us a clear visual aid for this. A green light signifies healthy individuals ready to train without major restrictions. A yellow light is for those post-injury who have medical clearance they can proceed, but with caution and specialized guidance. And a red light indicates an active injury or symptoms requiring evaluation by a medical professional first. Stop. Do not pass go. And we always need to remember the biopsychosocial model of pain. Pain is complex. It's a multifactorial, very personal experience influenced by biological factors, yes, but also psychological and social variables. A specialist should never just assume pain is purely musculoskeletal. There's often more to the story. The future of movement and training.
So, pulling this all together, what does all of this mean for the future? For us, for how we approach fitness and health in our own lives, especially in this modern world.
Well, the health and fitness industry is definitely waking up to a significant trend, something we're calling non-functional living. It sounds a bit stark, but it's real. Clients today are often physically molded by their environment, by furniture design, by gravity constantly pulling on stagnant bodies, and by sheer inactivity for hours on end. We're even seeing athletes suffering from overuse patterns that stem not just from their sport, but from these underlying daily habits and postures. As one source powerfully puts it, and this really stuck with me, today's client is not ready to begin physical activity at the same level that a typical client could 20 to 30 years ago. Think about that.
Wow. So the couch, the car seat, the phone, constantly in our hand. They're literally shaping our bodies in ways that maybe old school traditional training programs just aren't equipped to handle on their own anymore.
Precisely. That means just throwing someone into a generic old-school training program often isn't enough and might even be counterproductive for many people today. The future really demands a more advanced mindset in fitness. We need to create programs that prioritize functional capacity first, that consider individual needs, environmental factors, and specific goals much more carefully. It's about proactively addressing those muscle imbalances and overuse conditions before they manifest as pain or serious injury. And that's where the corrective exercise continuum comes in. It offers the systematic process designed around solid biomechanical, physiological, and functional principles. The goal: to improve resistance to injury, optimize movement quality, and ultimately increase performance levels for everyone, ensuring our bodies are not just strong, but smart and resilient enough to handle the unique demands of modern life. Outro.
What a deep dive. Seriously. We've journeyed from the pretty profound impact of our tech-heavy, often sedentary lives, all the way to the systematic solution offered by corrective exercise. We've explored its philosophy, the detailed logical phases of its continuum, inhibit, lengthen, activate, integrate, and the critical, clearly defined role of the specialist within the broader healthcare landscape. It's clear this isn't just about fixing problems after they happen, but really about proactive optimization.
Ultimately, yeah, this isn't just about avoiding a specific injury or finally getting rid of that nagging ache, although those are great benefits. It's about a more profound shift towards optimizing how your body moves through every single aspect of life. It's about building resilience and efficiency in your entire human movement system, which is especially vital given the unique and, let's face it, often demanding challenges of our modern world. It's really about moving freely, powerfully, and hopefully without unnecessary pain.
So, what does this all mean for you, our listener, as you go about your day? Maybe start to consider the small, seemingly harmless habits in your daily routine that slumped posture while texting, maybe that awkward way you reach for your coffee mug every morning. How might these tiny unconscious movements be subtly shaping your own kinetic chain, for better or worse? And maybe, just maybe, what small corrective adjustment could you start noticing or even experimenting with today to begin your own journey toward more optimized, resilient movement? Something to think about.